Hey, folks, calling all Lasso and leadership fans. Join us on this journey to a better, kinder, more compelling way to lead. We're going to be taking a journey through the hit series Ted Lasso, and we're going to be exploring, discussing, and challenging the leadership lessons that exist within it. And trust me, there are tons. Spoiler alert, we will assume that you'll have seen this at least a couple of episodes that we tackle, and we're aiming for about 15 minutes per podcast, so nice quick hits.
Now listen, Garth, I think you've got a little bit more altruistic views of this. I'm doing this because there's nothing else on TV. We've got a writer's strike, and Lasso is one of my all-time favorite episodes. I think there's other reasons why we're doing this as well. Can you think of any others?
Yeah, I mean, there's tons of amazing people out there that have different takes on Ted Lasso as a series and on Ted Lasso as a leader itself, and how that applies to a whole bunch of different industries. Like education is certainly one that you and I are interested in, but there's also, and sports and all that stuff. But there's also like, how do you just make a good team? How do you build a really good culture? And that's something that I love about this series as well.
I think in my mind too is like in the Lasso series, although it's fun, light, and it's about football, soccer, there are huge topics that are addressed in here. Everything from racism to harassment to mental health, anxiety, failure. All of these items are brought up, and then many, many more. And so I'm excited about digging into those and seeing how Lasso, his team, how the writers address these topics and what it might have to do with leadership inside school and greater organizations.
Yeah, and I love that there's no answer. Like there's no right answer.
Correct.
You know, yeah. Sometimes he messes up. But in each episode, so we're going to review each episode of Lasso, and then we're going to like be playful. We're going to reflect on some of the leadership principles that may have gone unseen, unnoticed, or maybe even underappreciated. But we geek out about this stuff, Jason and I. So we hope to bring out some powerful leadership strategies and maybe approaches, and then ultimately hear from you. We're also going to have different people on the podcast as well. So,
totally.
Get started?
Well, I think, yeah, I do. And I think starting this conversation is important. I want it to be with the broader community. So like you said, Garth, I want people to reach back out to us and let us know how this manifests in their space, where they think we're right on point. And it's kind of fun to hear when we're not on point too. So open to critical friends and critical feedback in that. But I think, honestly, Garth, I think we're way ahead of ourselves. We're assuming that everybody knows who we are. So why don't you, I'm going to let you introduce yourself so I don't have to do that. And then maybe I'll take it on as well. Tell us who you like from Lasso.
So I'm Garth Nichols, and I work at Havergal College in Toronto, Ontario, and I'm the vice principal there. And I also am the co-founder of Cohort 21, which is an independent schools sort of professional development organization that we run. And I have to say, as I've been watching Ted Lasso again and again, I have to say that my favorite character is actually Jamie Tart.
Why? What's about Jamie? That's like the fifth one you put into our script, and he's not on there.
I know.
Not even on the current one.
I know. Because I do think, like, you know, Rebecca was in there for sure. It's the growth. It's the growth, but also there even in season 1, episode 1, which we'll talk about today, there are little tidbits of like he's struggling with being the good person that he knows he can be, and it's just this struggle that it's a 3-series struggle that he goes through, and I like his interactions with everybody. Who are you, Jason? And who's your favorite?
Who am I? That might be 2 different answers of the same answer, but I just want to say too, Garth, I'm so excited to work on this project with you because I've been a huge follower of yours over time, and the way you look at innovation and leadership has always inspired us out here to do our work. So thanks for jumping in on this journey with me, and I look forward to learning from you. But if I'm looking at Lasso, I have to say Roy Kent has always been my favorite. I think, you know, the primal side of me, I come from the prairies. I'm born and raised in Saskatchewan. We use a lot of 4-letter words out there, and Roy speaks my language. We're going to keep it clean here because it's an educational podcast, but I know you've watched it and you know what I'm talking about. But I also what I love about Roy is the way he embraces a journey, the way he embraces his changes of his career. You know, right away, he's so transparent in the fact that he's not happy about them. And we're not generally in our lives, in our education, in our career. We're not happy about change often. And Roy is clearly not happy about many of the changes in his life, but he embraces it and he finds his path and he finds a way to contribute back and keep his career going in a place of passion and love. And I think finding joy in our work and our leadership is a huge part of, I think, what we're going to talk about inside this podcast. So by far, Roy Kent is my favorite. I don't know who I am. Everybody's probably got an opinion on that. But no, I love I love Roy Kent, that's for sure.
Well, Jason, I'll go right back to you here as well. You are a very respected and well thought of leader in Case Schools. You have your doctorate in educational leadership. You're head at Rundle. Tell us more.
Yeah, so I guess I left all of that out. I jumped straight to Lasso. But yeah, I've been fortunate to be a Rundle for the last 23 years, and I've been a part of Case that whole time. And it's just been a dream, and I love leadership. You know, I wouldn't have studied it for the last 10 years if I didn't love it. And so this is just an opportunity to create, which I love to do, and I know you love to do, Garth, as well. Create something new and get it out there. And really, what do we have to lose? Even if just I force my loved ones to listen to this, like almost all of the content I create, at least they've listened to something I've done. So yeah, I'm really excited.
And you know, we're just two educators here, but we are going to try and bring in other voices throughout the podcast to see what other people think about the episode. So look forward to that too. But are we nuts to do this?
Totally.
Like, we're busy people. Are we nuts?
Totally. Well, you know what? This might be nuts, but I think we're going to get Sudeikis on here. The 34 episodes of Lasso, and I predict by 24, Sudeikis is our guest host. So let's shoot for that, and let's see if we can't get there. I'm just about that crazy, but let's get right into lassoing leadership. Garth, when we look back at episode 1, the pilot, what's one of the themes that you saw and pulled out, and where should we go with this?
Yeah, I really love this idea where Ted is in the car and he's kind of joking around. Nate is driving him away, so he's pretending he doesn't have a steering wheel in front of him. And Rebecca says, working hard late at night, and he says, I just find, the harder you work, the luckier you get. Yeah. And I love that, and it resonates throughout the entire series. It's something we've heard in sport a long time as well. And so for me, that speaks to, like, it's not just working hard, it's working smart, it's being resilient, it's showing up, and it's leaning into the resources that you have. So working hard generates new ideas, and it generates new opportunities that will, like, push you forward. And this happens all the time to Ted. I mean, there's just these little things. So even when he's looking for an act in episode 4, it's the same person that he's seen all around, and he is actively looking for people. He's watching kids playing soccer, and he's always learning, with Coach Beard, which I love. And so the harder that you work, the luckier that you get. Yeah, that's something that I've seen, and something that really resonates with me.
Well, I think coming around, we'll come back to this in a moment, I think, but when we think about school leadership, in particular leadership as a whole, it's really hard work. And I think we have to lead out with that, saying, we know this is going to be hard. So often when I talk to leaders in our system, I'll ask them how their day was, and they'll say, it was really long, or it was really hard, but it was good. That's always like, but it was good. That's what I'm listening for. Because if it's good, then the hard work is definitely worth it. And I think about back to Lasso, one of my favorite moments of the entire, that episode in particular with the season, is when Beard and Lasso set up their office. And I think there's so many nuances in there. So first, they bring their desks together. So your work environment is going to allow you to achieve the goals that you're setting out to achieve. Secondly, the artifacts that they put up in and around the room. We see Wooden's triangle up there. We see overcoming odds, some things like Ali, we see championship triumph, and then see pictures of, some of his kids' notes to him, which means family is really important. But what happens in the last moment, I think, is most important, is Ted works so hard that he actually goes to sleep in the office. Yeah. This work for him is so purposeful and so driven that he's worked himself to exhaustion. Now, I'm not here saying work yourself to exhaustion. I think there's a difference between service and martyrdom. But at times, if it is purposeful work, if this is something that's in your heart and in your blood, I think you can work to that point of fatigue. And you see this in Ted. He wants it so bad that he's going to work to the point where, he falls asleep in the office and Beard wakes him up there.
And it sort of puts forward this really generative tension throughout the entire show, because Ted is experiencing difficulty in his marriage. He is away from his family, and so he is pouring his heart and soul into this work in order to make it, that sacrifice, kind of worth it. And I do think that that's a really generative tension. We'll explore that throughout this entire podcast. But how do you seek balance in your life, or is there such a thing, Jason?
And I think this is an interesting thing. I talk to new teachers, pre-service teachers all the time at the University of Calgary, and I dispute the fact that there's not a thing work-life balance. I just really don't think there's a work-life balance. I don't think there's anything that's going to create equality in those things. So I think it's got to be a work-life integration. And in this work that we do that's so purposeful, we have to really believe in what we're doing so that we can recognize that integration. We're in a 10-month cycle, most of us in education. We all work more than 40 hours a week during that 10-month cycle, and we drive to make up the connection with our family or the time off, the relaxation or 2-month block. I'm not sure that's entirely healthy either. But I think by finding purpose, finding joy, finding the reasons why we do this hard work and making sure they resonate with us, then we can sustain ourselves. And if you don't have those things, if you don't have the purpose, connection, joy, you can't sustain yourself. And that's when I think burnout sets in. I think, Garth, and you bring up a really good point. I really do think we should have a relationship expert on the show later, because there is that tension where, Ted's family is falling apart. And we don't want that in our leadership, because we can only be as good for others as we can be for ourselves as we are, in life. And so it'll be really interesting to have somebody who really understands relationship on this podcast talk about how that looks and how do you sustain healthy relationships and how we might do that outside of, our work, which is certainly demanding.
Yeah. And I love what you said about that work-life integration. And, Simon Sinek talks about, start with why, and you always have to have that strong alignment, that sort of values alignment too. But there is one thing that we'll talk about, and you've sort of led it at the beginning, is that in episode 1, we have that first instance where he's in the press conference room and he suffers his first panic attack.
Yeah.
And it's there's some oral cues within the show for it. And he's looking at his hands. This is something that carries on throughout. And, as you say, these are symptoms of something happening at a deeper level of who he is. And yet he is able to perform.
Yeah.
And so I think with us as leaders, it's important to understand, and empathize and show compassion that this is a 10-month, year for us. And so we're squeezing 12 into 10. But also one of the things that I do with my team is I review our calendar and I point out hey, this is where things get really, really pressurized. Mm-hmm. This is where things are lighter. Take the time here. I emphasize things like, a week before we are sending students off on a global learning project to Morocco and Spain, this is where you want to make sure that you are calm, that you have your checklist. You don't want to add this to, the week before you're going, because you want to be present for the students. And you want to be present for the families that are going to be asking you these same questions. So I really like that part about the harder you work, the luckier you get. There's an element of, I need to work hard at particular times throughout the year. I need to work harder than other times. And then as leaders, recognize when those times are happening to the people that report to us, right? And the culture that we're building around those times.
And I think there's lots of structures you can put in place to get to that area, whether it's the top of your agenda. I know the senior leadership team that I work with, we have a 2-week outlook at the top of our agenda, and we try to distribute the work between us. Like if I know I'm going to be out 8 nights in those 2 weeks, which will happen on occasion, I'm not going to be in the morning. So some of those important meetings in the morning either need to be moved or I need to be excused from them. And we try to balance our workload. And so often, this idea of working hard and getting lucky can only work in one context in my mind. I'll bring it back to what I hear from sometimes parents. We're only as happy as our unhappiest child, right? And I really think that our organization can only be as healthy as the leader is. And so if we want a positive organizational culture, I think it starts at the top, and I think you lead by example. And so if, you're always in a panic, you're always rushing, you're always burned out, you're always too tired, you're always too stressed, you're always too disorganized, guess what? I think that is going to manifest in your organization. So, you can work hard and get lucky, but I think in that context of working hard, like you said earlier, Garth, I think that's the point, is we have to reflect as leaders as to how do we work smart. And I think that's a takeaway from this episode, in my opinion.
The other thing I want to, as we're winding down this episode, you and I here, Jason, I want to also say that, asking our listeners, what are the things that you have on your walls? As we are starting this podcast, Jason, I'm really quite jealous of your outfit there, but I got this. This is a totem for the entire team. But it doesn't become a totem until well into the season, into the different years of the show. So we ask you, like, what's on your walls? What's something powerful or symbolic that you find in your office or in your school? And Jason, I know you've got a couple which is are really special to you. And each of those carries sort of a totem, but they carry a story that you can share as well.
I think to that point, in our leadership, sharing that with the people around us as to what are those totems and what do they truly mean to us? And then sharing that experience across your leadership team or the team that you have, and owning some of that can be really, really valuable as well.
Yeah. So there you go.
Yeah. So I think that Episode brings 1. Us. That's it. We're only 23 from Sudeikis, and we're 33 from the end of this. Everybody grateful. Yeah. You'd be grateful. There are 34 episodes of Ted Lasso. We plan to do one of these for each of those. So even if this is the worst experience, there's only 33 left.
Yeah. So what do you have on your walls? Think about that. And then, in terms of like the harder you work, the luckier you get. Find a way to maybe use that in your leadership practice between now and our next podcast.
And that's the timer. Thank you. All right. Well, thank you for joining us today on the podcast. We look forward to being back in episode 2. And please send us your feedback and follow along. Rate the podcast if you like it.
Thanks.